Hi, good afternoon and happy Sunday. Welcome to Mike's Laboratory. Today is going to be part 3 of the talker repair series. Today we're going to show you how to make a string, how to put it on the talk box, put the flywheel back in, the cover back on, put the tone arm and the needle back on, basically reassemble the box, and then we're going to clean off the tape and the ribbon spring real good. And at that point we should have a functioning talk box all ready for the final tinkering and tuning in order to make things sound right. So I'm going to jump right in without any further ado. Let me flip the camera around here. All right. Down here are the things we're going to need. We're going to start with making the string. A little bit of baling wire. Your string. This is 0.5 millimeter braided nylon string. This is very similar to the vintage string. I've compared it to vintage strings. It's about the same diameter, about the same stretchiness. I've been using this for quite a while. It seems to work pretty good. Got it on Amazon. Let me give you I just bought some. Let me see my fresh one. That's the stuff you're looking for if you want to do this. 150 yards tool roll. Okay. All right, first thing we do, take your string, and I'm going to have to move the camera here. You're going to want the string to be 30 inches long. Vintage strings on these guys, I think, are about 24 inches. I find that using a 30-inch piece gives me a lot of extra to play with in case I make a mistake. And all talking boxes are a little bit different, due to wear and things like that. So having the extra is good. So cut yourself a 30-inch long piece. I use this marking on the edge of my cutting board. Okay. Cut. And then the first thing to do is take your baling wire and a little pair of scissors, or excuse me, a little pair of pliers. Come on, I'm getting in the groove here, guys. Bear with me. All right, just grab the end of it, and you just want to make a little loop in there, about like that. Maybe a little more. There. I usually flatten it out just a little bit like this too, so I don't get poked by the wire. Okay. Now, the next thing is take your string, stick it through your little hole or little loop, pull it through, tie it off. This is one of the reasons why I use a longer length, so that I got plenty of room to play around, so I don't have to worry about it coming out too short. I just use a simple square knot to do this, and obviously for somebody with smaller fingers this would be a little easier, but hey. Come on, you bugger. It is what it is. Especially when you're trying to do it on a camera. I got this brand new phone here that's got a much better camera, but it doesn't seem to help with things like this. Okay, then, fairly obviously, cut off the end, leave a little bit hanging loose. And then I always take a lighter, burn the end a little so it don't want to unravel. And you take your super glue. Whoops, sorry, not super glue yet. Take hold of the string right about here. A pair of wire cutters. And just cut it off. So you have a little loop like that. Then, now we're going to mark the string with the little colored marks that you see on the vintage strings. For that, I use a couple of markers. There's 8 marks. Supposedly, they're supposed to denote what phrase as far as it's pulled out. I found that even the vintage ones aren't all that accurate. I try to get this accurate as possible. They are approximately that long. Make sure you get both sides of the string too. But honestly, I mainly do this just for show, so it, so it has a vintage look to it. The Cotswold strings that I've seen have these same marks, but I don't know what they use for it. Kind of paint maybe, or a more permanent ink. Well, in any event, this ink seems to work pretty well as long as you let it dry. Okay, once you're done with that, make sure you cap your markers. I really get mad at myself because it wrecks markers. All right, now time for the super glue. All right, you just want to put a little dab on the nut to make sure it doesn't want to come apart. And then this end piece, the other end of the string, you want to take some super glue and just do that. I kind of smush it into the string. And you'll see the purpose behind that later. Just take your string and kind of put it off to the side somewhere, hang it somewhere where it'll dry. I just use my vise there. And that'll take a couple minutes to dry, obviously. And once that's dry, it'll be ready to put onto the talker. All right, now your string is made, it's put on the side. All right, we're going to do a little pause here. I don't want to, because in order to do the rest of this, it's much easier when you have a working string in there and you can rotate the, rotate the wheel, the gears in the box and everything. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. Now, this next part is pretty critical. If you have this style box, okay, with this style cover, this process is much easier and more careful, or don't need to be quite as careful. However, I'm going to do it the hard way and the more dangerous way for people who have a cover like this, as I explained in my first video about the differences between the talk boxes in the various eras. So, first of all, if you have the easy one like this one here, all you got to do is just stick the flywheel in, take your cover and put it back on there. This is temporarily putting it back on there. Okay? And that way, the flywheel can't, the flywheel will be in there. All right, you're going to need a toothpick or something similar to stick in there to hold this in place once you get it wound. So what you're going to do is you're going to wind this top spool. And you're going to wind it all the way. And this is just like, it's the same thing as pulling the string. You're just doing it by hand. Wind it all the way to the end of the tape. Okay, when you get to the end, and you know you're at the end because you can see where you're pulling against where the tape attaches to the lower spool, then you want to slowly back it off until you find the hole with the string hole. One of these holes in here has a string hole in it. And where is it on this one? Trust me, folks, it's usually easier to find. Okay. Is it that one? No, it must be this one. Ooh, there you are, you little bugger. See the hole in there? Usually there is a corresponding hole on the other side of the spool, but not on this one, probably because it's an older box. All right, so anyway, what you want to do, first of all, stick your toothpick into the one with the hole for the string. Dang it. Make sure that that hole is clear. If the hole is clear, you'll be able to see it, the toothpick sticking through right here. Okay. Now I'm going to do something a little different here, just to make life easier, I think. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Okay, like I said, once you find that hole, you can see it pretty clearly now there. Okay. After you make sure that it goes through into the spool, crank it back just a little bit more, stick your toothpick in the hole in front of it, like that, and slowly let it go, and then you'll have it, it'll be locked in this position. Okay, now, most of these spools, this is the first one I've seen that doesn't, as a matter of fact, there's a hole on the other side opposite where the string slides through, so you can poke the string all the way through and get hold of it easier. Apparently Hasbro didn't think of that to begin with, and obviously trying to get the end of that string up out of that groove pulley after you stick it through the hole be a bit of a pain in the tail. So we're going to make this a little easier. I'm going to take my pin vise and I'm going to drill the hole all the way through the spool. Okay, got our pin vise, got a drill on there, and just gonna drill all the way through to the other side. Okay, and now as you can see, we got a hole going clear through. To reiterate, this is the first one I've ever seen that did not have a hole going all the way through. So that also tells me, aside from the metal tape lift arm and the other things I explained in the first video, that this is probably a very early box. Okay, so now we've done that, we've got our toothpick sticking through there. We'll check the string and see if the glue is dry. Okay, glue is not quite dry yet, so I'm going to take a minute and show you how this needs to go when you have the flat cover on a newer box. What you'll have to do is crank this back without the flywheel in there. Or you can put this cover on and hold it in place with your thumb, but they tend to slip around because there's no peg or anything on there. It's just a flat surface that gets glued down to this part right here. If you have to do that, whatever you do, do not allow this to fly free and spin back without a flywheel in there. If you do that, you can snap the tape, you can yank the tape out from under the little the little pegs that hold it into the spool. There are all kinds of things that you can mess up if that happens. So, if you do wind up doing it that way, be extremely careful. And now I breathe a sigh of relief as I get this back on. Okay. Another thing you can do in that situation is if you have a spare cover like this around, you can put that on there. Another thing that I've done when I have that and I'm afraid it's going to slip on me is I'll put the flywheel in there and I'll just temporarily glue this down so that it can't pop off. But then you got to cut the glue off to get it off when you're done with the string. Anyhow, that's how it works. All right, let's check this string one more time. Okay, yep, we got dry. Okay. What you want to do now is take that end of the string that you soaked with super glue. It's nice and stiff now, and you should be able to slide it right through that hole without too much trouble. Well, maybe some trouble. Let's see. Let's make sure I'm on the camera. It's going to be stubborn, so we'll get rid of the toothpick and hold it with our finger because this toothpick's getting in my way. All right, there we go. And just run it through the hole, pull her through. And as you can see, Vintage uses a little crimp connector. This thing that I'm using with baling wire is a little bigger. And I think it'll work a little better actually. Anyhow, next thing you do, take your toothpick or whatever, stick it underneath there, pull it through so that it now is on the spool. All right, I'll stick my toothpick back in there to hold it in the string pulled out position, and then we take the glued end of the string, bend a little hook in it with your fingers. I've found that squaring it off like so tends to work a little better. And you want to keep it straight along the axis of the string. Like that, close enough. All right. Slide the bottom of your hook into the groove. Push down until the string pops into the place below that little hole with the rivet in it. It's a hollow rivet, and just wiggle that around a little bit, and bingo. These older ones that have the rivet in the hole to reinforce it are tougher to do this with, but as you can see, it's not hard. That super glue really helps. Ones that just have a hole in the plastic are even easier to do that with. And then you want to pull it through. Hang on to your string. Make sure your cover don't pop off. Pull your toothpick. Still hanging on to the cover, and just slowly allow the string to retract into there. And there you go. You got a new string, and you got plenty of room to play with for tying off the dog tag and such at the end. Okay. Pretty cool, huh? All right. Next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this tone arm back on. So what we need to do that is take our pan here, and we're gonna pause it for just a sec here. I'll be right back. Okay, I have retrieved my spring and my pin from the pan, Now you want to take it like this. Just grab it by the head. Ooh, yeah, don't know, whatever. And just take it and push it back into the hole gently so it stays in place. Whoops, no, don't do that, dumbass. Sorry guys, I'm getting ahead of myself. First, put it through the tone arm hole, come through the top. And it just slides right in, it's a loose fit. And I take it like this and put it back in its hole. I said before, it's just a press fit. Push down on it a bit. It's push it back in place. You should not have to use any tools. It should slide right back in. While you're doing that, be careful not to lean on this with your fingers or anything. This tab that holds the one end of the spring, it'll break off real easy. And make sure when you're looking at it that it's straight and not pushed in there crooked or anything like that. Okay. Sometimes the hole will be worn out or get worn out. That's usually on a box that someone has messed with before. And in that case, you can just take a little dab of super glue and put it in the hole to make sure it doesn't come out. All right. Now for the fun part. The spring. All right. Oh, that spring's on there backwards. We're going to have to fix that. Oh, no, maybe not. It'll work that way. Okay. You want to make sure that the spring goes around the pin this way. And you always want to put this part in first on the bottom. Now what I normally will do is I will take a toothpick and I will put my finger over the spring so it don't go flying anywhere if I goof up. Oops, see how it popped like that? You don't want to do that and let it go flying anywhere. Just get it underneath. Yep, see how it popped off of there? That's what you got to be careful for. All right, we'll put it back on. Again, being very careful. Okay. We're going to try again. What was the word I used in the last videos? Fiddly. If you do lose it, it's not the end of the world. There is a way and a method to replace them. But, oops, see, look at that. It popped off on me again. That's what I was talking about. You got to be careful. All right. All right, hang on a minute. I'm going to have to rearrange things. I'm having trouble seeing and doing this while filming it. Be right back. Okay, I am back, and you'll never guess what. After lecturing you guys on don't lose the spring, guess what I did? I lost the damn spring. Okay? So, anyway, now I'm going to show you how to replace the spring. What you need to do is get yourself some automotive wire. This is a piece of copper wire, strand. It comes out of like a 18 gauge wire like you would find in light duty automotive wiring. I am still laughing at myself. It ain't the first time I've lost one, but first time I ever lost one while trying to show people how not to do it. Anyhow, you want to take your piece of wire, hold it like here, just about that. You wrap it around, whoops. You wrap it around the notch. in the pin. This wire is that it's copper and it's got some decent flexibility to it, and it won't also spring away on you. And you take it and you stick it, kind of bend it a little bit, and stick it down into this groove on the towing arm. Pull it tight. Leave that end hanging for now. I'm still laughing at myself. And then hook the other end underneath the little plastic tab here and kind of just bend it over. Okay, and as you can see, you get the same return action out of it. And I just tweak it up and around like this, cut the end off, and bend it up. And the same over here. Just clip this end off. And bend it over. Okay, there we go. Whoops, you're supposed to be bent over. I've tried other things to replace it, and nothing has worked as well as this. I got the tip from Scott Wild, by the way. Thanks, Scott, if you happen to be watching. Scott is the acknowledged master of talkers, and I learned quite a bit from him in little tips and tricks. Okay, anyway. Now, we have a working talk unit, hopefully. Pads haven't been cut yet, but we got them in there. And as I said, with this kind of cover, you can put it on there and you just got to hold it lightly, make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And make sure that flywheel don't pop out of there and do all the horrible things that I said can happen before. Okay, I keep a test chest around with a speaker in it. So you want to find out how it sounds. You want to drop your string through the hole. Set it in there on the pegs. It has to, there's these slots on the side line up with the pegs in the chest. If you're missing a peg or two in your chest, that's no big deal. It'll usually stay in there pretty tight with just two. All right. Make sure you're holding your flywheel cover on, and put a little bit of pressure on this back plate, and then pull the string, and let's see what we get. Okay, he's a little fast. But he is understandable. Okay. Now that we know what we need to do, when he talks too fast, that generally means that the pads aren't creating enough. That means the pads aren't creating enough friction in here to slow it down. Sometimes just simply, weirdly enough, sometimes just simply cleaning this out will slow it down. Sometimes you have to screw around and replace the pads and experiment with different sizes in order to make it work right. So what we're going to do first of all, though, before we worry about the voice speed, we're going to get the tape cleaned off the rest of the way and everything like that. Okay, your string has the marker marks on it. So you don't want to be getting any alcohol on the string. So be careful with that, because that will make the colors run and it'll look like crap. It'll still work just fine, but then you won't have your fancy marks. Okay, so to clean this stuff, nothing but rubbing alcohol. I believe I mentioned that before. And for lubrication, I found I don't use anything other than a dab of Vaseline on the gear if it needs it, and just silicone lube applied. Spray silicone lube, this stuff, something like this, applied onto a Q-tip and used to put it very lightly at the pivot points and the points where things spin if it needs it. All right, basic process for cleaning out the spring and the tape is simply a bunch of Q-tips and alcohol like I poured into the cap there. So Q-tip, squeeze it off a little bit, pull your string, hold it like this is how I do it, but whatever works for you. go down there and let it go and just clean it. No, that's not too bad, hardly anything on there. In any event, I generally do this if it comes out nice and clean like that. I start from the top of the spool sometimes, or you can go from all angles. And there's a little bit of junk came off there. And I do this a bunch of times until the Q-tip comes out relatively clean. And you can see it's not too terrible. So that tape's probably all right on the top. And then I go ahead and I give the bottom of the tape a thorough cleaning. You'll recall how we cleaned off the tape arm. Now we want to get whatever gunk's off the bottom of the tape. And you do that by getting your Q-tip wet again. I just hold it underneath the tape like this and just let it ride. And not too bad, a little bit. We'll do it a couple more times. Oh, and while you're doing this, you don't want to let your string go pop back out through that little hole, obviously, because you don't want to have to put it back in there again. So I just go like this with my finger to stop it. And that's pretty clean underneath there. Not too many problems there. All right, same issue goes for the ribbon spring. Go ahead and just clean it like this. And a lot of gunk on that. And do this and get the back side of the spring as well. When you're doing the back side, be careful not to put too much pressure on it, or it'll start to ball up and come off of the spool axle here. It'll like double up and get caught on the spool axle, and you don't want that to happen either, because then you got to unwind the spring and screw around with it to get it back into position. These springs are delicate and they can get kinked or bent pretty easily. So you want to mess with it as little as possible. In other words, don't take that spring off or mess with it unless you absolutely have to make the box work. In the final video in this series, I will move on and show you guys some of the less common problems and how to fix those as well. However, that's only for experts. But then again, maybe you will be by the time you get done watching this vid. I make no claims on being an expert, but I'm pretty good at this. I've done it a lot now. Okay, and it's starting to come on. It's starting to get cleaner. Not as much gunk on it now. And I'm going to pause for a sec while I keep doing this. I'm sure you get the general idea, and it'll probably be pretty boring for you guys to watch me do this for another couple minutes. So I'll be right back. Okay. Tape and spring are pretty clean. Now, next thing we're going to do is the cleaning of the pads, or the adjustment of the pads. This video is already getting kind of long, so I'm going to split this into a couple parts. I'm going to call this one quits right here. I got to go take care of a couple of things, and then I'm going to come back, and the trimming down of the pads and adjusting of the voice speed is going to be, this is part 3, so that'll be part 4. So, and I'll finish that today, and I'll start uploading them, both of them, tonight. But for the moment, we'll see you guys in a little bit. It's been fun. I hope you were amused at me, because I certainly was. Oh my God. There. So guys, do not lose the spring. That's how you fix it if you do lose it. And anyhow, as always, this video's been a blast. I'm going to finish up the next one a little later. We'll see you in a bit, guys.